Thank you, everyone. You can just call me Reno. If you have any question, you can just write in the chat during this session, or you can just raise your hand and ask question. It's completely fine. It's the first time I do this session about power analysis, and it's just introductory one because if you want to see all the possible tools and that you can use for power analysis, it really depends on which analysis you're planning to do. But it's something I wish I had as a session when I was PhD student, or even after when I was a postdoc and I was starting my own research career. It's something that I underestimated, but it's becoming, thank goodness, more and more popular because it can give us a lot of good information before we start doing the experiments. We have been starting using a lot with some of your colleagues to plan their own experiment, for instance, with Sam that is here, with Dorothy, with many other students to get a sense if we were going the right direction or if we were just wasting money and time. So today we are gonna just see a bit of introduction, what's the rationale behind, some tools that are available online for free, and then it really depends. You need to customize the analysis depending on what you are trying to achieve, because there are only the experimental design you can do for answering the same question. Sometimes even when you have the same research question, you can decide to use within subject, between subject, 3 groups, 20 groups. It really changes a lot depending on what you are trying to achieve. And it's important session as well, because if you ask some of your supervisor, for instance, Zenon or Daniel Pease, one of the key questions that they receive during their PhD examination, have you done a power analysis? Can you give us some more information about all this part? And so it's something that it comes quite often when you do experimental research as a question, because especially when you have an examiner, they want really to see if you know what you're doing. It's one of the perfect questions to ask, because to understand power analysis, that means that you need to understand what are the basics of statistical testing. So today I'm gonna just give you a scratch overview of what is a statistical testing. If you need more information, send me an email. I can send you more longer class on statistical testing. And but we are gonna just cover a few information because we need this key information later on. So today we are gonna start with basic definition about what we are talking about, because there are some keywords that they need to start getting stuck in your mind if you decide to do especially experimental research and data collection with your construction research. So we are gonna scratch a bit of the surface of statistical testing. We are gonna start seeing what are error types. Generally, when I teach master student, I try not to get too into this, but here we can escape from error types. And then we are gonna see what is a power analysis and a simple tutorial, assuming that tomorrow we want to do a new study with one of you. So don't forget that this is my personal experience with statistics. So that's how it happened. I wasn't trained as a statistician, but I had to learn. I'm a civil engineer, but I had to learn a lot of this to defend my research and to plan in a more effective way my research. So most of us end up becoming more and more expert because it's something that you need to do, especially if you want to stay in the research world. This is the key question that I always ask when I do first statistical classes, asking people if statistics is an exact science. Differently from probability, there is not always the same answer. There is a lot of assumption that people can make before they plan their research or when they use statistical testing or any other tool to predict things. In fact, if you can master statistical analysis, it's like you can become also a perfect liar, because you will know all the tricks that you can use to prove things that actually the data are not telling. But sometimes there are also things that is impossible to say through the data because the data is not good enough or accurate enough or wasn't suited for that purpose. And you may end up lying, but don't worry, lying is part of statistics because you will see there is always an error. So it could be that even the data is giving you the wrong direction. And that's why sometimes we need to repeat study, because by repeating study, we reduce this kind of probability to say a lie, not because it's intentional, because the data are basically fooling you. And of course, with great power that I'm giving you came great responsibility. So you're becoming a stats superhero. And with great power come also big electricity bills. So be careful with that. So let's start seeing a bit of a key definition: population and sample. When we try to do inferential statistic, we try always not to interview everyone or do a questionnaire with everyone, especially if the population is quite big. So it would be unfeasible to think that we want to do an investigation with what Massey University students think about Auckland campus and expect that every single of them will answer our questionnaire. So what do? We have limited resources, we select a sample, and it's really important in most of the time we randomize the sample, and we make sure that it's not biased because it's not just the school of built environment, it's not just in international students. We try to represent with our sample what is actually the real population. Then what we do is to do our analysis. I'm pretty sure you're all familiar with SPSS or Excel. We say, we found this, and then we start making the inference. Okay, if we observe this in the sample, we can say that it can apply for all the for all Massey University students. The classical question: would you be a suitable sample to answer question about Auckland campus in Massey University? If I was doing a question about this campus, I was asking only you, do you think it will be a good sample? Yes, no? You can be a starting good sample, but not comprehensive enough because you are just from a PhD degree in construction. So you will be a good starting point, but if I want to say this is what Massey University students in Auckland think, it won't be a real truth. I can say instead that this information just apply for the students that are within the construction degree and doing a PhD. So in that case, you will be a suitable sample. So most of the time, what we do when we do studies is one of the classical things, but in study, you can do things in many other ways. Easiest things that you can have in a study, one of the easiest is that you have two groups. One goes through a path of research and another group goes towards another path of research. And then you start making comparison. That's the easiest things that you might think when you do research. For instance, in my research, we do often, we compare training, like Raja was saying that we do training here, new training with virtual reality. If we want to compare virtual reality training with something else, we need to have probably a control group. We train another group of people with something that is more traditional, and then we can start comparing. And we can do visualization. This looks better than this, but then we need statistical testing to tell us which one works better. This is one of the flow chart that is simple, and I try to suggest a master student to go through, that it tells you which statistical test then you need to use to compare results from one group against another. And it really depends on the number of groups. It can be 2 groups or more than 2. And it really depends the selection of the tool on the normality of the sample that you have. But I don't tell master student, I don't go too much in detail in the details, but the devil is in details, because you can do statistical tests to check normality, but there are also some property based on the central limit theory that might tell you, okay, if the sample is big enough, the estimation of your mean, that is most of the time what we are trying to assess in statistical tests, can be assumed from a normal distribution. So if you go and read on many books, they may give you the rule of thumb. If your sample is above 30, you can always use t-test. But then if you go more in details, you will find study that tells you, well, 30 is okay if it's not normal, but kind of look normal. So it's not really skew the data. But if you have a really skew distribution, you will see that the minimum that you probably need is 100. So it's the rule of thumb that you can use, but you need to be careful when you use this assumption. And another thing that is not in these slides, but you need to consider, is that statistical tests might change what you're going to use, if it's a within or between subject analysis. Between subject is the example that I was telling you before. We have a group that gets trained using virtual reality, and there is another control group that gets trained just watching a video. Another example, and this is a between subject. So you have two independent groups. Something that, for instance, we are doing with the SAM, we are testing a VR augmented reality application. In that case, we can use a within subject. So we have the same group of people that try the first setup, and it tells you, I like it 5 out of 10. The same person goes to the other setup and say, I like this one 7 out of 10. So you have two data points that come from the same person. So in this case, if you want to compare the results and you do it with multiple people, this is a situation in which we call within subject. So you need to use, even within t-test, a really specific test that is much more powerful than the traditional, the between subject test. So when we talk about statistical tests, that's what we do. I'm using t-test just because it's one of the most famous. He has won a lot of Nobel Prize. No, it's you will see everywhere. It's one of the most popular, but the same story holds true for many other statistical tests. So when you start using a statistical test, you need to, first of all, understand what is the null hypothesis. In this case, the null hypothesis for a t-test, and by the way, the t-test can be used when you have two groups. And you can see here in the box plot that the two groups, I just give a silly example. There is male and female, and there are two distribution of data for both of them. That can be salary. It can be anything else. It doesn't matter in this context. And we want to assess, is there any difference between the means of the two groups that we have in our sample? So the t-test has this null hypothesis. It tells you that the mean of the first group is equal to the mean of the second. And a statistical test works in this way. You have this hypothesis that we call null hypothesis, and we can only test if we can reject it. So we need to test if this one is false. To do it, we have the famous p-value. And then what we do, we have the data, we use any kind of software, and it tells us, look, the p-value is 0 point something. Then what you need to do is to compare with the alpha, that is the significance level. Historically, if you see a person woke up, famous person woke up, and say, we can assume that 1 out of 20 is fine. So 0.05. What does it mean 0.05? We will see in the next slides. So that's why most of the time you read papers, you read the stuff, and you say, this is significant, this is not significant. It's because you get the p-value, you compare with this famous 0.05. What we can do with a statistical test, if we see that the p-value is smaller than 0.05, we can reject the null hypothesis. So we can say, look, that statement is false. So we can assume then that the two means are different. What you can't do is to say if the p-value is bigger than 0.05, you can't say the test tell you that the two means are the same. It just tells you you don't have enough evidence to prove that, which is different. If you don't trust me, talk with a lawyer about the wording. So this is the things that I never really talk much in details, but now for power analysis, we must do it. So you can see that the reality is on the top, assuming that we have the reality here. We might have a situation in which the null hypothesis is true and the null hypothesis is false. The null hypothesis, as I said, can change depending on the test that you're using. In the other case that we were seeing before, we were like, if we use that null hypothesis, it's true, that means that mean 1 equal mean 2. If it's false, means the mean 1 different from mean 2. That's the reality coming from the real population. The statistical test instead give us the results here. And we said that the statistical test can reject the null hypothesis, or we don't have evidence to reject it, right? So we have 4 possible situations. The first situation is, let's assume that the null hypothesis gets rejected. So we have the situation in which the reality was actually false. So we were supposed to reject it. So we did a good job. In the other case, if the rejected but the real answer was that actually it was true, we made an error. So this is called type 1 error. We can have also the situation in which we don't reject the null hypothesis, and there is the case that actually the null hypothesis was false, so we did a mistake. Or the situation in which, and in this case we call it error 2. We have the situation that the statistical test doesn't allow us to reject, we don't have evidence, and the reality is actually that the H1, the null hypothesis was true. So 4 simple conditions. Yep.
We have a question online. They ask, what about just one group?
Also just one group. If you can use it, what do you mean just one group? If you're doing an experiment within subject that you ask a same person to answer multiple questions about different assessing, for instance, different setup, or you're talking about something different? It's referring to the previous slide. So let's go back. You mean this one? You can even talk. We can listen to you.
Can you hear?
Yeah, please.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so just go back.
Previous?
Yeah, the previous. Yeah, this is. Yeah, here. Yeah. So here you put how many groups? You only put 2 groups or more than 2 groups?
Yeah,
so my
and
question
that's
was
why
about
then
this.
I eventually said, wait a second. It's within or between subject, because it can be 2 groups, but it can be that is 1 group, but assessing different scenario. So I'm showing the limitation of these slides saying within the group.
Yeah,
but also when you have the same group answering different question, if we can split the data in 2 groups, the data, not the people, still you can use a t-test. But if from the same group, then you need to account for it. Does he answer your question?
Yes.
Perfect. Kevin, what do you mean most popular test?
Just clarifying the slide from Zenan.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So we were saying that we have a fourth scenario. We can do a really good job in two spots and really bad job in the other. Because we are not getting all the possible data. So there is always some degree of uncertainty that we can control. So we estimate this. We say that the amount of error was the probability to make an error. We call them alpha and beta. So you remember the alpha that we were talking, like the 0.05. So when you set up your statistical test and say, I'm going to use 0.05, you're basically say, I'm accepting that 5% of the time, I might discover something that is not actually true. I might say that I might reject, I might reject the null hypothesis while it wasn't the situation. The beta instead is when you do error type. So it's another kind of probability that you accept that you can do. In that case, it's like you reject a null hypothesis that shouldn't be rejected. So those are the other probability. You're accepting that you are doing a correct prediction here of 1 minus alpha and 1 minus beta. What is power? This is power, the famous statistical power, where all statistical power examination comes from. So it's basically the probability that we do a good job and be in this square here. I won't say what you will read because it sounds like a lawyer talking, but this is the power. We are basically saying that we are doing a correct decision and we need to start putting numbers to alpha and beta. As we say alpha, we already said it. What is the common alpha use? What is the common beta use when you do a statistical test? So if you go in the literature, you will see that a common used beta is 0.2, and so the common accepted power is 0.8. So in other words, we are saying that we are accepting 20% of probability to do error type 2. All right? This is something that we started historically with. But now there are different things that you can go and look online in different journals as well, and I'm going to show you later. For instance, if you want to publish a paper in Nature Human Behavior, they tell you this number is way too small for us because there is too much probability that you're going to make a wrong assessment and it's not good with us. You need to have at least 95. And you will see later, sooner, that this doesn't mean like, okay, let's put another 15% and everyone is going to be happy and I can publish on Nature. You will see that all these numbers, both alpha and beta, really affect strongly what is going to be the sample size. So it's not like it means money, it means resources, and it means much more than let's put this number there so Nature people are happy with this and we can publish on Nature. So that's the dream, but the dream comes with a lot of cost and sweat. Any questions so far? And if you start reading also on many articles, there is also movement that say, we need to stop using 0.05. We need to have 0.005. And other people that are pushing back, because if you put these numbers smaller and smaller, and you start seeing the sample that you need to test those hypotheses, you start having hundreds of people in the sample size. We are going to get there today, so you can start playing with this number and see what it means to select something for alpha and beta and in other words, the power that you for your analysis. Something that I can tell you that people will tell you, if you publish something and they get your paper and you put all the right numbers in it, if they say they calculate the power for a specific statistical test that you have, they might say that your study was underpowered. That means that you try to test something, but you don't have enough data to prove it. So can we trust this study? Not really. So that's why most of the time you read on the news that there is too many underpowered study out there. They make a statement, but they didn't have enough sample size. And that's why we are here today, to make sure that we at least we justify which sample we have. So we have bulletproof with our reviewer, with our examiner, with our partner. In some case, you're always in trouble, regardless the alpha and the beta. And I put also here some nice videos that do also an exercise of visualization or showing even all alpha and beta are connected with each other. I don't want to spend time and make you overwhelmed with these things. I put the video there. I really like this guy. He looks like a statistician explaining this concept. But for this class, we don't need to go that deeper. At home, if you can't sleep tonight, go there. Make sure you don't drink before. So this was our outline. We checked 3 boxes. Are we all happy with this? Can we go to the next stage? Okay, let's start doing the fun part. Let's try to see how we can make a nice power analysis. We need ingredients like any recipe, right? So our flour is gonna be power. You know that I'm Italian, so I always bake pizza. Our tomato cheese is gonna be the alpha. So are the 2 numbers that now we know what they are. Their probability to make errors. And the other things we never mentioned so far is the effect size. That is basically measuring the magnitude that we are trying to measure. What actually means, when I was studying power analysis, I was thinking, what the hell is that? How can you measure it? Or where should I even start about it? Have you ever measured it in your statistical testing? Have you ever heard about it? Probably you have heard, but never seen how we can use it. The Bible or the Quran or whatever is the book you follow is this paper, is one of the key paper written. And Cohen has been one of the father of behind here. And we use quite a lot one of his metrics and it's available online. If you go on Google, you will be able to download and read it. It's a nice piece of text. And we are going to use some of these tables because it's really one of the best places where you can go. And you will see that he has thousands of citations.
92?
Yeah. And he comes from a psychology background. And we are going to talk about that why I mentioned psychology, because there will be a spot inside. You remember? So if you go in this paper, you will see that there are many different types of approach that you can use to measure effect size. It really depends on the statistical test that you're going to use. And it really depends on, even within this part, we have the D that is the Cohen effect size. But then there are other researchers that have said, this D is a bit biased if the sample size is too small. Let's use G. And then there is an equation that allows you to move from D to G that is slightly changed depending on the sample. But if the sample are big, then they pretty much go hands on hands. Another things to keep in mind when we talk about power analysis. So we have identified the 3 baking ingredients. You need to understand if you're doing a priori or a posteriori. Latin words. A priori means that you haven't even started the study, you need to identify the sample, right? The other way around, you can use a posteriori sample power analysis. That means that you already done the experiment, and probably you forgot to do the power analysis. And you want to see if the power of your statistical test is good or not. So we are above the 80% threshold, 0.8 or not, or 95, depends on the requirements also of the journal or your supervisor or whoever is doing. It might even be that someone pay you and I want the results with this power. That's in the contract. Before going and see the details, why do we need to do a power analysis? We don't want to waste time. What does it mean? You can decide, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna go and do my experiment. I'm gonna have 10 people doing one training, another 10 people doing another training, and every training is gonna take 1 hour. So I do 20 hours of work, and then I start writing the paper. Is it enough? There are a lot of studies that are done in this way, and then you realize that it was basically a waste of time because you couldn't, yeah, you have spent 20 hours, but they were not enough to do any meaningful statistical test. You can also have the other problem around that you say, I'm a really good student. I'm gonna show off with my supervisor and do 100 and 100. Do we really need 100, or we could have stopped at 20 and 20? In that case, it's another waste of resources because your supervisor needs to give you the vouchers. And then we need to spend 200 by 10, 2,000 New Zealand dollar when we could have done it with $400. And ethics, especially when there are situations in which you need to do experiments and think about drugs. You need to give a drug to a person and a drug placebo to another person. So there is always in some research a risk. And if you do it this and you put too many people at risk, or you put too fewer people at risk, and the results you know already that they won't give you any results, is it even ethical? So you can understand that you need to do the things right, not to one side have something that is useless. Yeah, you have the data, but they can't tell us nothing. Or you spend too much resources and there was not necessary to expose too many people to risk, or you spend too much money of your university or supervisor. Please.
If we are targeting the sample size and we are doing the power analysis, so it is important to do the pilot study as well before.
We are going to go there. Just give me a second. Otherwise, we won't spend the hour and I'm trying to create the suspense and, don't destroy the movie. I'm just kidding. So let's go in deep in one of the effect sites that is one of the most popular one. Okay. And let's see, this is the famous Cohen effect size, the D. In details is like, it looks like this. So basically you have two groups in your sample, and then you have the mean for one group, the mean for the other groups. And if we want to calculate, let's assume that we have already done the experiment and we want to measure the effect size that we are seeing in these results. Then we need to have SP that has this nice equation. You can do everything in Excel, right? Or if you're too tired to use Excel, you can go on Excel and you can put the number. If you can go on online and you find many people have put online the equation already implemented with you. I'm a terrible in create spreadsheet. There is always an error. So you can even ask ChatGPT. And we are going to talk about this next month. It doesn't make any sense, right? From a mathematical point of view. Let's go and see what is the meaning of the effect size on this video. This is a nice online tool that you can just go there and play around. It gives you a sense of what is the effect size. So basically, if the effect size is going big, higher and higher, and those are the distribution of our two groups, that means that the overlapping between the two distributions became smaller and smaller. It's easy, of course, to detect something that is a big effect size, because you can see that the wrong distribution are really far apart from each other. So it's much easier to do this kind of detection. For instance, example of things that you can expect really big effect size, we go outside and we measure the lighting condition outside. We come here tonight and we measure the light condition. You might expect already that the condition of the average of what we measure now for nighttime is completely different. If we start thinking about, okay, let's measure now and let's go back outside in 1 hour, you can think that there is not much variation of the time of the day, so the effect size we are trying to measure is small. That means that the two distribution of data that we are going to collect, they are more overlapping with each other. Make sense? So say that there is a big effect size. That means that there is something that is there and really easy to detect. Saying that there is a small effect size, that means that there is something that is really difficult to detect. Make sense? Yes or no?
Yes.
So this is a place where you can go and see, okay, I measure this effect size. If you want to get a sense of how much overlapping, just go on this tool and have a look at it. So we said that we need 3 things for our power analysis. And alpha, beta, and effect size. How shall I get the effect size? So those are 3 possible, plus there are other solutions. There is also a nice video of a guy telling you all the bad things about every single approach. There is no perfect approach. It's classic in statistics that there are different people sometimes that they have a completely different idea of what should be the top approach. It's important to remember that the context do matter. So an effect size is not, you can't say that this is a big effect size in any kind of study. In psychological study, it could be a really good estimation, probably starting from the one that we will see in some tables in a few seconds. In other study, might not be the case. And also the effect size, the effect size that you want to detect, it might change depending on what you are trying to measure. It depends if you are doing something in medicine or if you are doing something in construction research. So let's go and see an example if we want to check in the literature. This is a paper that we just published. Let's assume that we want to do an experiment about augmented reality. And we want to see if people using augmented reality learn more than people that don't use augmented reality. So this was the study. In this study, we used 2 groups. And you can see that if you go through the paper, we report the p-value and the effect size. So you can see that we didn't find anything significant, but still we report the effect size here. We did the calculation. So let's assume that someone wants to do a similar replicate this study using the same things and do it probably in another university or even here in Messi. He can do a power analysis using, let's assume that we want just to check what people, the difference of what people have learned right after the training. This is the effect size we could use in our power analysis. Another things that you might have is like, but no, I don't really, my study doesn't really replicate that. Shall I trust this number or shall I be more strict with my data? So there are a lot of questions that you need to start thinking. Another good things in literature, and this is another paper we published this year, could be going through a meta-analysis. So systematic literature review that have meta-analysis are really useful because they report the effect size for many studies. So this is about the effect size comparing people that were trained using virtual reality and people that were trained using something else that it wasn't virtual reality. So you can see that we have an overall here on the bottom effect size, and you can see the effect size for each single studies. So from an engineering point of view, you can say, my study is really similar to this study here. I might pick that effect size. Or you might say, look, my study, I'm going to train people about with virtual reality, and then I'm going to have a control group, but my study doesn't look anything like this. So I'm going to use the effect size that you see right here. The overall effect size. So when you see people tell you go and check it in the literature, you go and check if there is any study that is really similar or if you are replicating something that has been slightly done. It could be a good clue to understand what was the effect size that they measure. They don't give you the effect size, you have the equation to calculate. So you need to have the mean, the standard deviation, and the sample for the two groups. Right? And then you calculate D. What if I'm doing something completely new, like a sum? No one has ever used this kind of questionnaire for augmented reality. What can we do? A possibility could be a pilot study. The limitation of a pilot study is that you use a really small sample. So there might be a lot of fluctuation of what is the effect size you observe if you just collect data from, let's say, 10 people. You could get completely different effect size if you were doing with the other 10 people. The other approach is that you go on tables like this and you use a rule of thumb. This is the table from Cohen. And it's the same table we were looking before. So the minimum things, assuming that this is true every time, but it's not, because this is come from psychology studies. And here you will see there is another, in this link, you will see that these guys try to check if those thresholds are okay for medicine. And he show you that they are not really good, because in medicine, there is much more data and meta-analysis and reproduction of study that allow to do things. In construction, we are not yet there. That's why we need more PhD students. Probably in a few hundred years, we are going to get the same amount of information. But it could be because our study in construction, if you involve human, and this comes from psychology, it might be a reasonable thing to start with a large effect size given by this paper of 0.8. In fact, if you go in our paper in automation in construction, you say, we assume that we want to measure this effect size of 0.8. All right? But if you go in that YouTube channel, you will see that the guy is going to tell you all the bad things about everything. And that's normal in statistics. There is no perfect recipe for everything. And as I said, the context doesn't matter in this case, because this is okay, probably this rule of thumb from psychology study. If you want to do something medicine, these are not so good. So we basically cover all the theory about power analysis. So we learned that we need 3 ingredients, but I haven't showed you what is the equation to bake the cake, right? The best things for me to show and to learn myself is through an example. And I'm gonna give you an example and we are gonna do it together. So let's assume that we want to do a new study and we want to train people with augmented reality. So you can see the people on the training and there will be another group that is doing training with a video. We want to understand, okay, we need to do this study. How many people we need for each group? Let's go and put like the bare minimum that we need. You can say, we don't want to go to nature. We want just to pass the viva and go home. So let's put 0.8. We are fine. We don't need to go to be fancy. But later we will start seeing if we want to go to nature, how much more time it might take. And let's put that we are still fine that one of 20 times out of 20 times we are gonna do one of the two errors. Now the things that we can say for certain, we are gonna have two groups. So is between subject study, right? Is not within. So we need to use the t-test independent samples. Which effect size shall I use here? Probably, if you want to check just after their training and see if the people that went through augmented reality and VR are through augmented reality and the video have learned different things, amount of things, I will probably say, probably I can start with the Daniel paper. It seems like really similar to this study. And he reported 0.5. That is kind of medium effect size that was reported. So it could be a good value to start with. This is the magic equation if you're gonna do a t-test independent sample. If you wanna do a power analysis, you basically need to use this equation. N is the sample size that you need. You need just to be really good in estimate this zeta, and good luck with that. Of course, this can be done in Excel, but there are people that have been helping us to avoid these kind of nightmares. And they've already implemented those equations. That's why we use software like GPower, because instead of having also the possibility that the student or Reno does a mistake in implementing those equations, GPower does the work for you. At least the calculation. Of course, you need to know which input you are putting, because if you put wrong input, game over.
Open access.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's open access. It's freeware for sure, so you can download it for free and use it for free. I don't know if you can modify the code. Open access means that yeah, but if you want to make a donation, I think they accept donation. Same with supervisor. So the beautiful things about GPower, and you can do, by the way, power analysis using Excel. You can do it in R, Python, ChatGPT, Reno GPT. So if you can do it, I like this one because it's free, plug and play. So you go there, you click things, but you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you're in trouble. So this is the calculation that I did with the power analysis, the GPower. You can see I put tails 2.
Needs to group.
No. What does it mean 2? Let's see if someone wins a chocolate that I forgot to bring. So I will give you a debit. What does it mean 2 tails?
Suppose this.
Nope.
Oh.
No. No. 2-tail test, it's used when you don't know which one is bigger than the other. There are 2 groups, and you can make the assumption augmented reality is going to be definitely bigger than the other. So you're going to calculate 2 means, and you don't have an idea which one is bigger than the other, right? That's the mean. In fact, if you go and study many statistical tests, they will tell you is one tail or two tails. One tail is there is body of literature saying that augmented reality is definitely better than VR. Augmented reality is definitely better than video. So in that case, we can use one tail. In this case, there is no evidence. Even the study of Daniel didn't show any significant. So two tails in this case is a good way to go. Then what did I do here? I put an effect size of 0.5. That is what we saw from the previous paper. Then we said that the power, we don't want to go to nature. 0.8 is more than enough. I want just to get a degree and get out of here. And then here they put you the allocation of what's the percentage in each group. Are you going to try to have 20-20 or 20-40? So let's assume that in this case, there is no reason to think about that there will be a disproportion. There might be cases in which it's much more difficult to get specific type of sample because they are professional, they are too busy, so they are going to be much fewer than students doing the experiment. So as I said, let's assume that we want to go, and that's, I'm going to show another beautiful feature of GPower, and then I'm going to open and show you live in a few seconds how it works. Let's assume that we want to go to nature with this paper. So it tells you the bare minimum that we will accept from you is a power of 0.95. So this is a nice chart generating GPower, in which you see here, this is the power that goes from 0.8 to 0.95, and this is the sample size. So how many we said that we needed before? We said that we need 128 people, 64 and 64. So let's assume that we want to do now the same study. We need at least 105 people for each groups. So you can see that it's not like, let's put this number so nature people are going to be fine and going to publish. No, if you put a more restricted number, that means that you will need much more sample size to reach that power.
For each group.
In this case, it's the total sample size. So it will be 105, 105. This is, we don't trust Daniel results.
No.
It's a good guy. We don't trust Reno that designed the experiment, or some that did the data collection. There is a lot of uncertainty. It's not a matter of trust. In any experiment, there is an uncertainty. So this is just to show you if we make a more restrictive selection of the effect size and be more strict, means let's assume the effect size is even smaller than what they said. So if we start from 0.4, you will see that we will need 100 and 100 people. So in total, 200 people. So in other words, say that you're going to try to detect a smaller effect size, means that it's the overlapping from the two curves is much bigger. So it's really difficult to detect that difference because there is a lot of randomness. So that's why I find that these charts are really beautiful, and GPower can do it for you. So let's go and see how GPower works. So when you open, it looks like this. There are different ways to use. You can go through tests and select what you're going to try to do. The way that I generally do it is to, like, now we are going to do a t-test, right? Because we have already assumed that the results are going to be even normal distributed. I'm going to go here and select the test that we wanted to have. Difference between two independent means. And we said that we are not entirely sure that one is going to be better than the other. Effect size, we said that we are going to put, look at this. This is Cohen value. But in our case, we select 0.5 because we already saw from Daniel's paper, it was fine. We said that we don't want to go to nature, can't be bothered to be famous. So we put all the value here, and then we calculate, and you can see the results here. 64, 64. Let's see the impact in which we knew already augmented reality actually give you much more learning knowledge when you learn. So we can make the assumption that is one tail. In this case, we need only 51 per groups. So if you can make this assumption that one group you expect it to be bigger because you have reason behind, it makes you save a lot of resources. Imagine that you need to pay $100 for each individual. In this case, we reduce by 20 persons, so we're saving quite a lot of money, 2,000 New Zealand dollar. We can give another scholarship. So just to show you that sometimes making the right decision can have a huge impact. And you don't need to go to GPower and say, no, I want to detect a minimum, a small effect size and be really crazy about what I want to do. I'm going to show you what it means to have a really small effect size to be detected. So if you want to create a nice chart, just to have a sense of what, you don't need to change the number and collect the numbers and put in Excel into the chart. You go here, XY plot, and we put on the vertical axis that we want to have the total sample size. And here, let's assume that we want to see the impact of effect size. So let's do the study not for nature. Let's do the study with the 5% of alpha. And let's assume that we want to have a really small effect size from 0.1, and we go up to large effect size. So you can see that if you try to get a really small effect size by default, good luck getting 1,250 for each group.
2000 in New Zealand.
In New Zealand, they do construction, and this is not even nature. Wait. Let's say no. We want to publish this paper on Nature because we're too boring to do a simple paper.
Oh. Oh. 4,000.
If I had a chocolate, I would give you a chocolate. But because I don't have it, now you own me a chocolate, right? No, the important things in some study, does it even matter? If we measure, I rephrase. If this is a study that is about medicine and we can save people, small people that we save is a good thing. So if a medicine given also the possibility to improve the survival of people, those numbers matter because one is not like $1, is one person. In some study, you can go then to a company and say, we identify that if you do virtual reality training, it's more significant than using video training. And if the person is not aware of what you're talking about, you can lie to them and say, yes, more significant, so the effect size is really small. That means that doesn't really matter.
So, please, I want to add something about the test panel. Is there any difference between t-test and f-test?
We're getting there. So it doesn't. So you can even tell the liar, we observe that it's effective, like it's more effective, but you don't tell them, it's gonna change from a score of your company of average score of 86% of what they scored the people to 87%. From an industry point of view, would you start investing in virtual reality? On the other hand, would you even bother to investigate if there is this 1% of change from an industry perspective? So in some topics, Yeah, there might be an impact sometime, but it's so small. Do we even bother to go and measure it? A question for you. Because from engineering point of view, if the effect is not even medium, probably doing this kind of change in a company or do this investment doesn't really matter. So that's why I'm telling you, because the first things that people do, go to GPower, I want a small effect size, I want to go to nature, and then okay, I want to go home now. And of course, the question that we received, it was like, what if we are going to use a different statistical test? You can see that there is the possibility to use man-Whitman test. Let's assume that our data are not, they are not going to be normally distributed. We know already. We are not going to have a nice distribution. So we are going to end up using a t-test. We know already. Let's we are going to have two groups, two tails, and let's put again the same effect size. We don't want to go to nature. So you can see here that you need 67 participants per group. So you can start checking, and then there is a nice manual of GPower, of many other forums, that if you're planning to use a specific test, you can go there and see what are the settings that I need to put in GPower, or even which equation I need to use because you want to calculate yourself. And please. Of course. And you cite that when you install it, and say if you use it, at least cite that you're this paper because it's the paper of the software. Yeah, it's, and you can use for even multivariate analysis. There is a plugin, there is an option in there to do the same. Another tool that is really nice to use. Yeah.
Why use AI rule for this and then AI tool?
No, it's just implementing an equation. It's like SPSS.
Sorry, sir.
Please, yeah.
The reason why I
It's no, sir.
The reason why I asked that was, I use this GPower analysis, but I don't use t-test in my own case. I use f-test from the test.
Probably you were doing an ANOVA. Yeah.
No, it is.
But wait for it. How many groups did you have?
I only have one group, but I have different independent studies.
Okay. Condition. It was like the same person were answering about different things. If you do an ANOVA, now think about this. I won't give you the answer. I'll give you on Monday. In your experiment, do you need to know that between these four conditions, at least one is different? Or you need to know which one is the best and which one is the worst?
Yes.
The second one. If you do a power analysis with ANOVA, try at home, you will get the results. But the ANOVA, if you do it, is going to tell you, hey, at least one of them is different, right? If you want to test, then which one is the biggest and which one is the highest or the lowest, what do you need to do? You need to start doing pair tests. You start comparing system 1 with system 2, right? Try to do the power analysis for that specific test. The simple answer, you will see that the ANOVA is going to tell you, 5 people is fine. We did it with your colleague, Essam. If you do just for ANOVA, you can go home and say, just 20 people. But we were thinking, is enough to tell, one of them is better than the other, but we can't tell you which one because we don't have enough sample size. So you need to always to think ahead. Make sense? Try to play a bit. Probably you already know which test that you're going to use to compare if you are going to compare 2 and 2, one with one. Are you going to use the Bonferroni correction? Are you gonna do that? So it really depends on what are the assumptions you make. The other beautiful tool that is not as powerful, joke powerful, but still a good for visualization is Jamovi, which is another free software to do many statistical things. Jamovi. Here.
Ah, yeah, demo.
Right.
Oops. It's good because it gives you also nicer visualization. The only things that you need to do if you open Jamovi, GPower won't be here. You need to go here and add within the library. So if we go to GPower, you see that, yeah, it gives you the possibility to do a power analysis, but only for t-test. So it's not going to be good for you. On the other side, let's go and do the one that we were using. Of course, unless the coder was having too many beers when he was developing this code, we should receive the same results. You see here. But the things that I like is that also do a better visualization in which you can see the sample size on one row. You can put the effect size and the power. So it's a three-dimensional visualization of the previous two charts. So it gives you a sense where you want to stop. If you want to see this problem as a surface problem. And because we are already late and don't want to be told off by my wife, this is just the conclusion that I have prepared for you. Don't see power analysis as an enemy. It's an ally to have a backup and answer a lot of questions about why you did what. So it forces you to think. I know that it's annoying to think, but if you want to be a researcher, you need to spend the night looking at the ceiling and thinking about the power of your studies. So the context matter in different way, depends on what you are doing, which parameters you need to put as an input. Resources matter. We need to always try to avoid wasting time and resources. And if you get stuck, like your friends, ask for help. Most of the time I've been collaborating with other people around the world because I was doing things and I reached my limit and then I was trying to ask a question. Don't fool yourself that you can't be bothered to be studying and then you go and ask someone and will say, come, go to hell. This is not, you could have asked ChatGPT, you shouldn't even come here. So don't over collaborate that you can't be bothered and you ask every single thing. So first, start playing yourself and try to understand yourself the concept. And once again, thank you for CIB for organizing and to the president, Raja. And if there is any question, I'm gonna be here for another 5 minutes to answer question, or you can contact me by email. You can find me online, easy. There are no many Ruggero Lovregio. Good luck spelling it. And thank you so much.